Welcome, everybody, and this is a new episode. My name is Nicole Pinkston, and I am your host. This is a new episode of Mrs. Pinky Thoughts, and I am glad that you could be here with me. Thank you. We have a special guest for you today, Professor Donique Rolle, and we're going to be talking about critical race theory versus authentic American history. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm good. How are you? Very excited to be here.
Thank you. I am so great. And I want to get some of my business stuff out of the way first, some of my pluggables. My name is Nicole Pinkston, and most people know me as Mrs. Pinky. As you can see around the edges, I have my donate at the top for my PayPal and also my Cash App. If you want to subscribe to my channel, please like and share. Thank you very much for joining us today. Donnie, can you tell us and the audience a little bit about yourself so people know a little bit about your background?
Sure. Well, my name is Donique Rolle. I have been an educator for 15 years. 15 years, that's a long time. But my most important job is being a wife of 17 years. I have an amazing 12-year-old son who is talented, smart, funny, and who also happens to have autism. Because he had autism, I decided to offer my support to other women that shared the same journey as me. So I also have a nonprofit organization called Putting the Pieces Together, where I support other families and help them navigate their journey. So I'm always teaching in some capacity. So that is a little bit about me, but being a teacher is what I'm known for in my profession. At home, I'm mom, I'm a wife of 17 years, and all of that good stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit? I want the guests to know a little bit how you came out from behind the scenes. I know that we had our friend Sharice, who was a conscious Black conservative like the rest of us and like me inside of the network. And can you just tell us a little bit about your story there, and then we'll get into the topic for today?
Yes, so I've actually have been a closet conservative for a while. But it's so funny, but when I first was able to vote, I voted conservative. I was not political at all. Like I literally just voted my values, my Christian values. That is it. And I actually was not political for a long time, probably until about Obama. And then I went through a phase where I was liberal. Like I went through, just really believing Obama and the hope and for the first time voting Democrat. I didn't do that before. Bush all the way, senators, mayors, everybody. It's always been Republican. And for the first time, I voted Democrat for senator because I wanted him to win. I wanted him to do great. And then by that second run, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, what did I do? What did I sign for? This is a bit too liberal, a bit too progressive. And I was still trying to find my way because I was turned off by the Republican Party. I was just not feeling it. But then I was not trying to vote Democrat either. And like I said, I eventually came to my senses, but I more came to my senses during the Trump era. But before I've always labeled myself independent. Even though I voted Democrat that particular time period of Obama, I still never called myself a Democrat. I didn't call myself liberal, didn't call myself progressive, but my mentality was very much liberal. Like I taught my students as a liberal, like that particular time period. But like I said, I eventually snapped out of it. And I ran across Sharice on, I think it was Instagram, and I was blown away by her post because she started talking about pro-Black. And I had never, ever heard of a conservative say anything about pro-Black or say to be honest, anything that was uplifting about Black people. I've never seen a Black Republican on a big platform say anything to me, in my opinion, just uplifting the Black community. And that was the first time I was just like, wow, what is that? So I DM'd her and said, what is this thing that you're a part of? What is this conscious conservative? And when she explained it to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that's me. That is where I fit. And so she encouraged me a little bit to get on Twitter. I had another friend encourage me, and I said, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go for it. I'm a conservative. I'm a teacher. I teach African American history. Now what? I'm done. I don't care what anyone says.
I know, that's right.
Diving all in.
Thank you so much for being brave, and thank you so much for coming on to our show. So now we're going to jump right into it, because this is where it's going to get a little spicy, and we're going to try to navigate the thing correctly. So we have this terminology in the lexicon right now, and it's called critical race theory. And we've been talking about it back and forth. And you call yourself an authentic American history teacher, that you didn't need CRT, you didn't need critical race theory in your classroom. Can you tell our viewers and people who watch this later or hear it on a podcast, what exactly is critical race theory? Before we talk about the problems or the good side of it, what is it?
Okay, well, first, I definitely want to give a disclaimer. I am no CRT expert. There's definitely people that have more knowledge than me about CRT, but I have read articles from critical race theorists. I'm currently reading a book because I wanted to know what was the fuss about. And it's actually not a new phenomenon. It's been around since the 70s. It started as a way to examine policies and laws and systems that promoted inequality. So you had professors, you had lawyers, you had law students, just really examining these laws. So what's wrong with that, right? Because after the Civil Rights Act, things started to kind of stall in the Civil Rights era. Like there was not a lot. Well, this is what the theories were saying, that they felt like they started seeing more policies having a negative effect on Black people. So they wanted to do something about it. So that's how it started. But now it's morphed into something bigger, something that we've never seen before. And I want to read a little bit of the definition because I really want to get it correct. And there's so many tenets to critical race theory, by the way. And what I'm going to share with you is just, I would say that every critical race theorist believe this. And just so you know, they all don't believe every component. They all have their own opinions. They all have different belief systems. But I believe that they share this in common. So critical race theorists now believe that racism is an everyday experience for most people of color, and that a large part of society has no interest in doing away with it because it benefits white elites. They also believe that American institutions are racist, and that you are either divided into two categories. You are either the oppressed or you are the oppressor. And so the people that are in the oppressed category are Black, any other person of color, if you're LGBTQ, if you're a woman, if you're any part of any disenfranchised group. If you're privileged, the oppressor, you're a white. You're specifically a white male. And then they also use the term cisgender, which I guess means a white straight male. So that is what it is in a nutshell. And like I said, this is not the only definition. Like there's so many components to CRT, but I believe that they all share this, and this is the one that is really getting everyone in a tangent, this particular definition of it.
Yeah, so that's the core definition of CRT, and I've heard it pushed out through different aspects. Can you explain how I know I've been doing a little back and forth on my own Twitter about the educational side, but can you show where it's at in other aspects of American culture?
So you can see CRT, you can actually hear it in music. You can see it in TV shows, movies, it's in colleges. Churches are now implementing parts of CRT, and of course, K through 12. And I was thinking about, as you asked me that question, I was thinking about a television show. I was thinking about Blackish because I had my students watch it. Well, we watch it for different reasons. And one of the episodes had to do with discrimination and racism and inequality, and Dre, the main character, was just saying how Black people have it so bad, and it's just, poor Black people were oppressed, and I just couldn't help but laugh because he practically lives in a mansion, and he's an executive on the show, and his wife's a doctor, and his kids go to private school. So I was just like,
well, so that's what the ish part is.
Right. But there's a lot of language like that. I'm noticing it more and more in TVs and movies. So, and it's recently, church, I've never heard churches adapt to any form of secularism or Marxism or CRT. So that's pretty new. But its implementation in K through 12 is actually is not new. It isn't. It just have never been called CRT.
Can you explain a little bit more in the educational system as you being a professor? Now you say that you've seen it through
But
the
not a professor, a teacher.
I'm sorry, my mistake. But as you've seen it within the school system, how have you seen it manifest its way through different channels, and how have you, as a teacher in your classroom, navigated those waters? How have you dealt with it?
Okay, so I've been teaching 15 years, and I can say I've seen it for a good 7, and I'm being nice. So I'm just saying 7 because I can recall, just instances that I've seen it in the past 7 years. But so it's implemented just in the language. So at first it's more of the discussions that teachers have with students. And I'm in high school. I've never taught elementary, so I don't know what the discussions look like, although I've heard from other teachers. But it starts off with a lot of social injustice, what's happening in the media, and then becomes certain opinions then become facts. So let me give an example. So I was looking online because I'm always looking to see what people are talking about when they say CRT is implemented in schools. So I was looking online, and there was a high school that has a psychology course, and I can't remember the name of the psychology course, but here's what the topics were: racism, and they defined racism as prejudice and power. And then they said, therefore, people of color cannot be racist. So this is what they were saying as factual information. There was no debate. There was no, oh, what's your opinion? This is my opinion. No, they deemed this as factual information. They said all institutions are symptoms of oppression. Nuclear family reinforces racist, homophobic prejudices, economic gaps, wages, and the government promotes stereotypes. And so this was on a PowerPoint that I was looking at that a teacher was teaching her students. And this was a course they had to take to graduate. And again, there was no like, oh, what do you think? It was more of, this is a matter of fact. This is what it is. No debate, just that particular information, which, these are debatable issues. Like, you can't say this is fact, or at least if you're going to give them this information, at least say, what do you think? Like, don't deem it as factual information. And then, which I found interesting in middle school. So I'm going to give you an example from high school, middle school, and elementary. So in middle school, they had a discussion about equality and equity. So equality had a lot of negative descriptions to it. This is, again, I'm looking at their PowerPoint, and I'm seeing this with my own eyes. And I feel like people don't believe me when I give them examples of lessons. No, I've actually seen this. So equality was, like, people can't have equality. Black people will never have equality, but you can have equity. But when they, like I said, when they described equality, was more negative. And then they said equity was just more attainable because representation matter. So you need to strive for equity, and this is how you do it. So they start, saying that there needs to be a Black lawyer, there needs to be a Black, just a Hispanic in this position, a homosexual in this position, and then take it a little bit further. So I'm looking at Boston and Virginia, right? So they eliminated their accelerated math courses. Why? In the name of equity. So they were saying, well, there's not enough Black people taking accelerated courses. There's not enough people of color passing accelerated courses. So let me get rid of it in the name of equity. And so they're using these words, and I feel like they're trigger words because they know, especially Black people, we are very emotional when it comes to race. People of color, we're very emotional when it comes to our culture, when it comes to our race. So when you, as a professional, tell us that there's no equality, that we need equity, or equity matters, we need to see representation. It's nothing wrong with saying that you need representation, but when you're dismantling something in the name of equity, I just find that crazy, and I feel like that's racist. So what is it that you're saying because we don't have enough we don't have enough people of color or Black people in these accelerated courses. Now we have to get rid of it because Black people can't pass them. Really? Like like you're getting rid of it in the entire state? Like no Black people can pass, you know what I'm saying? So like that just doesn't make sense to me. And I feel like a lot of these buzzwords are used to trigger us. And then there's an example in elementary, and I was on a teacher website when I saw this. So, and before I say that, I had a few people on my timeline saying that, oh, this doesn't, CRT in school is not causing children to be racist or to look at white people different or to look at different races different. Well, let me give you an example. There was a teacher that said that she taught a lesson about racism and discrimination. This was a 5th grade class. And she said, one of the things I told my students about the history of white people and how when we were walking on the same side of the street, that we had to look down or we had to move. And that was the history. And that happens today. White people are still, invade our space. They don't want to move. And then so she mentioned that her student the next day said, oh my gosh, Mrs. G, guess what happened? I was on the street. I was on a sidewalk. A white person was on there and I was there. They didn't move and I didn't move either, because I remember what you told me, that these white people, they don't like to move and they feel like I'm invading their space. So I just walked by and I think I even hit her and she just looked at me. So, it's just, so it's those type of lessons that are being embedded. So you think that she's not going to feel a way about a white person or her after you just told her that? Like, of course, now she's going to look for it. So that's an example that I saw. And these are just like some of the examples that I've seen. And I feel like it's very, dangerous, especially when you're using words like Black people are not powerful, only white people are powerful. Well, I beg to differ. Like, why can't we debate that? Because let me list off some powerful people. So Oprah's not powerful, and forget Oprah. My friend she was 24 years old and a vice president of a bank and Black. She's a woman. She's Black.
Yeah,
she's powerful.
And when we have issues with critical race theory, we're coming from the side of how they're making us seem like we're lesser than
Yes.
the guys that they're trying to empower us. But
yes.
what we're seeing with the conservative movement, because we're on the right, we're seeing white conservatives seeing that they're seeing anti-white racism within it, and they're noticing how they're being called oppressors, called racist. Mm-hmm. They're telling these white children that they inherently are evil and things like that. How do you think that affects students as a teacher? And can you tell us, how do you teach these same concepts in your classroom?
Well, as far as when you mentioned about the white conservatives and they're starting to notice what's happening, I just find it very interesting, because implementations of CRT have existed for so long, but it affected Black people more. It degraded us. It told us that we were less than, and it gave us a sense of falsehood that, okay, I'm passing even though I can't read, I can't do math, and you're dumbing down subjects for us. You're calling things like racist math, that as if we cannot do accelerated math, as if we can't do algebra. I feel like you're insulting our intelligence, but that has been existing for a long time. And let me tell you, Black teachers have been complaining. Black parents have been complaining. And I feel like we were the only ones that were complaining and making a stink out of it, but it fell on deaf ears. And not only, and some people also think that just because you see a Black face that is promoting CRT, that all Black people are for CRT. It isn't true. The majority of my teacher friends are liberal. They are not for the dumbing down of education. They see what's happening. They see the trigger words that's being used, which is very interesting. So I do find it interesting that it's now such a big push on the conservative end now that it affects white children, because we are all Americans. So I feel like if you really upset about it affecting your kids, be upset that it's affecting our kids as well. The effects are detrimental to us both. And I think I was able to get CRT out of my class is because, and I always say the word authentic history, and people, someone asks, what does that even mean? Like, what is authentic? I think authentic history is you're being able to present all sides. You're able to really discuss the truth about America, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like my students, I can tell you, do not feel like victims. And we were able to talk about really tough subjects. Like we've talked about the crime bill. We've talked about Margaret Sanger. We talked about Black Lives Matter movement. We talked about Black power, like actually said those words, Black empowerment, Malcolm X, Black Panther Party, all these people that were deemed Marxists. Like we had conversations about that, but I always allowed them to hear 2 point of views. And it is so interesting. Anytime I post anything about my work, I'll have more liberals be so upset with me. They're like, you're just brainwashing them. I'm like, do you know there's barely any material that's conservative that I have to like search for, that I have to really dig and show videos, and that they actually are experiencing more liberal material than it is on the right, but I balance it out in a way that I'm allowing them to debate. I'm showing them both sides. I'm showing them videos. I'm showing them Black conservatives that disagree, and I allow them to form their own opinions. One semester, which for 9 weeks, we talked about racism, and people also got mad at me. But I'm like, listen, we didn't discuss racism in full until the third 9 weeks. Like the first 2 9 weeks, I build them up. Like I showed them empowerment. And I think this is what helped as well, and how I was able to talk about racism, because my theme of the year was empowerment. And of course we had sub themes, but I wanted to show them that you are a powerful person. Like Black people have money. Why do people keep saying there's no money in the hood? Are you kidding me? We spend the most money. We spend the most money. Sadly, not responsibly and sometimes, but so I showed them how powerful Africans were before slavery. I showed them how powerful Black people were during Jim Crow. I showed them how powerful Black people are present day. So they were really built up. So by the time we got to the racism piece, yes, they were angry, but they got over it very quickly, because I quickly reminded them, again, remember when we talked about how these people overcame segregation, and how this Diane Nash she was 19, and look, she did the whole freedom rights movement. I reminded them of Claudette Colvin, who was 15 years old when she refused to get her seat. Rosa Parks wasn't the first. It was Claudette Colvin, a little 15-year-old. Look how big her impact was. Think about the impact you can make. I showed them King Randall, what he was doing at such a young age, and oh my gosh, they were inspired. We talked about entrepreneurship. Yeah. So not King. Is it? Wait, I'm saying his name. Yes.
King Randall. He's
yes,
going to be
King Randall. Yes.
At the same time too. So if people are catching his over at Fox, I just want to give him a shout out, because it's going on kind of at the same time.
Oh, at the same time. Okay.
Yeah. But so another question I have with critical race theory, and this is probably going to get into the little spiciness of it. So we know as conservatives, and we know as even as Black conservatives, that CRT isn't the right answer. Yes, it's talking about some things that have happened in our history. Yes, we have racial inequities in certain areas that are not, stopping us. We have overcame so much as a people that we haven't let the flaws of America tear down America as a whole. And we're not promoting, let's go after white people for our history.
Right.
But then when we get to talking about solutions of how we get rid of this critical race theory, or how we tear down this narrative that's getting pushed on the kids, and they're in hip hop, they're in, like you said, Blackish entertainment and movies and literature, we get people wanting to just go to the governors and go to the school boards and ban critical race theory. We've been pushing back as conscious conservatives against banning critical race theory. And why do you think that has been catching so much backlash, and why are you against banning critical race theory as a solution?
I could not believe how much backlash that we've been getting about ban. Like I was actually surprised. Like I didn't think people were going to push back on it at all. And like I told you earlier, there was a woman on our thread that said, I am so sick of people saying that banning is not the answer. The reason why I'm not, first of all, I do believe in freedom of speech. I believe that as conservatives, that's not what we do. Like, we compete. Like, I believe that we compete. And the reason why I don't think is an answer, even though I know that 2 states have already done it, and that's fine, but I'm how long is that going to last? Because what's going to happen is we would just rename it something else. We've always done that in the school system, always. Like, anytime they tell us not to teach anything, what does that mean? That you have a bill? What is that? Like, I read the Texas bill. You know how many loopholes there is to teach CRT?
Can you
So
give
many
me
loopholes. Like,
an example so people can understand why we're saying that these laws are, I mean, they might make the constituents feel good, like they did something, like the parents rallied up and we hit in CRT really hard. But can you explain how these loopholes and how these laws can be exploited that CRT still stays with us?
Right. So first of all, some people on the left side totally exploited the bill. They said he's not letting us talk about Black history, which is not true. The bill definitely allows for that. He said you cannot say that one race is more superior than the other. Okay, I won't use those words or those terminologies, but I can imply it. I don't have to say it at all. I can imply it. You know what I mean? Like, he also said that, what did he say? That, well, that was the biggest thing that he said. You can't make oh, and he also mentioned something about if a person that you can't talk about, no, you're not compelled to talk about current events and social issues. So a teacher said, okay, he said, I'm not compelled. I'm not, to me, that means he's not forcing me to do it, but I can do it if I want to. So there's like,
yes,
a big hot topic is always Black Lives Matter. Like, they're always in the media. So you're not, as a civics teacher, you're not going to talk about current events. That's what you do. You talk about current events in civics. I remember civics. You always talked about the students literally turn in current event articles. So what happens if they have something about Marxism or critical race theory or white supremacy? You're going to give them an F? You're not going to accept it? So there's loopholes.
Did you see, I think you posted something on Twitter about they are hosting an event in a certain city and they didn't call it critical race theory, but you were able to peep the language and you saw that it was basically, excuse me, a critical race theory get together, but it wasn't labeled critical race theory.
Well, I believe this, are you talking about the one that was like queer studies?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, yeah, it was actually, no, it didn't even say that. And I wish I had written it down, but it was something like creative. It had the initials of CRT, but it was like creative diversity something or training or something like that. And so it still had this, the CRT in it. But it was, and so again, they were talking about how CRT is morphing into something else. So it's not just about race. So now it's about LGBTQIA. So this particular training had to do with trainers teaching, coming in and actually and giving classes to students that are gay, and they're totally doing a whole study on it, math, like the word questions, the word problem questions will have something to do with being queer. Even their language arts is talking about cisgender, is talking about trans, like it's okay. Like these are stuff that they're sneaking in there, but they're not calling it CRT. They call it like it's a creative something, with the initials, but it's just called something else.
I actually looked on the American Bar Association because CRT actually came out of the law schools, and it was law schools who started it. So for us to go to the law who created CRT and look for a restitution within the law to fix it, then lawyers, especially the page I looked on was the civil rights attorneys, are the ones who are defining and redefining CRT. So that's where the law, like they're signing in the law, but then they're going to have also more lawsuits. And a lot of the parents are going into their school boards and changing it that way. I think another way we could do instead of banning is open up school choice. Give parents the freedom to take their kids out of certain schools if that's not something that they want
Right.
to learn. You know, we should open up school choice, and people are not bound by whatever the public school in their district is teaching.
Right. Right. That's interesting. And then another workshop that actually wasn't a workshop, it was a book, and that it was geared towards elementary school students. And the initials again was CRT. And I wrote it down somewhere, I can't find it, but it is interesting because their particular activities was fine. Like it was about diversity and implementing books that have authors of color, if you're a Hispanic, Black. And so it was great. I was like, wow, this is really neat. But I'm curious to see what that's going to morph into, because the initials are still CRT. It's not called a critical race theory. It's called something else. Again, it has those initials. So I'm like, I'm really interested to see if that's going to veer off to something else. But the other thing, another reason why I'm a little afraid of banning too, because now what happens to my course, right? So my course has nothing to do with CRT, but it's not it's a course that might make you feel uncomfortable. So are you going to tell on me? You know what I mean? Like, if you're offended, instead of asking me a question, if your feelings are hurt? So like, what's going to happen when people that really truly wants to teach Black history, and I don't hold anything back. Like I said, I teach the good, the bad, the ugly. Like I tell you the truth. I tell you the truth about our founding fathers. I tell you the truth about Christopher Columbus. I tell you, but there are also, what people have to understand is they are more angry at you if you don't tell them, if they find out later. I cannot tell you how angry I was when I took African American history for the first time in college. I was livid. Like, you hid something from me. And then when my students learned about a massacre that actually, I'm from Florida, and so the Ocoee massacre was like our Tulsa. Like Ocoee was our Tulsa. And the same result happened. And it was 25 minutes from where my school is. When I told my students that there was a massacre and what happened and how beautiful the city was, and it had 2 towns of Black people prominent, they were angry. They were angry not just because of the massacre. They were more angry that they had never heard of it. And it was only 25, it's literally 25 minutes from where they live. Like, why don't I know this? Like, I felt like they were more angry about that than the actual massacre itself. So you have to tell people the truth. And I think another way that I was able to really speak to them about racism and hard things, and to them to be open to a conservative view, is because I was empathetic at first. In the beginning, I listened. Like, I listened to their stories, and I know some of it was they believe the media. They just want to kill all the Black people, and everything in the beginning was, this person's racist, the police are racist. Literally, when I tell you, I spent
it's always like a binary. It's always to the extremes. It's either
it was
planted
extreme
around every corner, coming to get us, or it's hunky dory.
Yes.
I love Lucy time.
But you know what's interesting? When I started talking about racism, and like I said, conservatives are really mad. They're like, how in the world are you talking about racism for 9 whole weeks? After that, they have never, ever said white people are racist, or this person's racist, or police is racist. It completely ended. Which you would think during that period, they would be like, yeah. Nope, at all. Which I thought was really interesting.
I'm just going to pop up a couple of comments. I did pop up this before for people who watched it and saw me do it. I'm going to just read it to you again. The Alchemist, thank you for being with us. I see you a lot in our shows. He said, if CRT was created as a response to the failures of American institutions, how do we implement real American history into the curriculum? Many Americans don't even know their history.
Yeah. I think we need to start telling the truth. And so it's really tricky. So again, I'm going to speak from a high school experience, because I know in American history, they are limited to what they are teach. Like in Florida, we teach the test. Like they don't have time to be doing Tulsa. They don't learn about Tulsa in American history. They don't learn about just so many things. I was surprised. They don't learn about white lost cause
A lot of
or
people
the
learn
Lily
lost
White
cause.
movement or the Black and Tans.
A
They
lot of
know
people
any of
learn
that.
lost cause as fact when actual scholarship shows that it's most mythology and like the South's way of trying to fix their side of, the Civil War. Like I, grew up thinking that lost cause was a little bit too.
Yeah.
And so
Truth
that's
be told, they still teach lost cause.
yes. And what I'm trying to, what I am in the conscious conservative movement, I feel like we're trying to show people is why.
Can I pause for you just for a quick second? Because my
Go
son
ahead.
is going to bang my door down. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I'm just gonna give a shout out to a couple of people that are in the audience. We have the Alchemist. Your question, you said some people are afraid of the truth as they have been indoctrinated in patriotic knowledge. The reaction of some Tulsa residents to the mayor's call for closure to the Tulsa massacre show fear. Yes, that is a very good, important fact, and I can talk about that a little bit while she stepped away. Um,
I'm so sorry.
that's fine. That's okay. But I was talking about how some people grew fearful when the mayor of Tulsa was talking about the Tulsa massacre, and they were afraid because people have been indoctrinated in patriotic knowledge. And I'm like, well, you can't truly want to make America great again or make America great at all if you want to hide some of the things that Americans been through. And the point I was trying to make is it's very disingenuous to tell people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and to get out there and give it a good try when there's history to show you that we did that.
Right.
There were successful cities that were Tulsa, that was Jackson Ward in Virginia, that were actually destroyed due to racist governmental policies. Like I-95 goes straight through Richmond, that destroyed Richmond, Virginia, and different things like that. And there's another comment. She's saying she graduated Florida in 1990. Tina Shumway, I'm sorry if I massacred your name. She said, nope, she didn't learn about that massacre at all. And she graduated from Florida. Mm-hmm. And see, so how are conservatives going to be ready on the battlefield of ideas to fight different things that the Marxists are trying to, and the socialists are trying to bring? They'll use stuff like this situation in Florida, then springboard their socialism off of it. But we can't attack it because we don't even know it exists because we weren't taught it.
Right. Yeah, we have to know our history. You have to know our history in order to. The thing that I think bothered me a lot about the pundits is they don't know the history. And of course you can't be empathetic because you don't know why Black people are so emotional when it comes to race. You don't understand why. You don't understand our fear of police, even though I know the stats. Like I know there it is incorrect that there's not more Black people being killed by cops. I know that.
We know. We know
that. And guess what? My students know that. I made sure my students knew that because I knew
that doesn't alleviate when my husband was pulled over the other day. You start to thinking, and that's why it's important that we have a diverse set of conservatives that are out there fighting the knowledge, because as soon as you make something open, and I've already seen liberals say this, they're going to do the same thing. Like they're saying now, oh, they're going to ban climate change. They're going to ban this. They're going to ban. And now it's open that, well,
yeah. Yeah.
We can start banning. We can.
Right. Sometimes I think we make it too easy for the liberals to the left. Like, I'm like, they're smart. They know how to maneuver their way because they see where the conservatives lack and they jump right in there and finesse us. Like,
so we have to make sure that we make it clear that critical race theory is not a new theory. It's not something that just popped up and Trump was trying to slap it down with his executive order, or these governors are trying to hit up or the states that are running. This is something that has been in our system since the 70s. And saying that you're just going to get away with, oh, it violates the Civil Rights Act. Well, these are lawyers. Do you don't think that they know that? They
Right.
they can't figure out the legal loopholes to get it into society.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going through the comments, and I just this is just shocking me. Not with my own school education, but just with what other people are saying. Um, uh, T says, he said, I graduated high school in 2020 last year. And I will say a majority of my high school, I was angry at white people because of what I was taught until I did my own research and thought outside of the box.
Mm.
Now, a small story about my life, my sister and her husband met in high school, and she's black and he is white. Now, can you understand how that would have been awkward if they were in school at now and hearing how racist white people are? I probably wouldn't have
Oh,
nieces and nephews, or other
right.
parts of my family is biracial and things like that. And
Mine too.
yes, and it's just crazy because I do want to point out that I feel like conservatives are just getting new to CRT because now they're seeing the anti-white racism getting scaled up through different organizations pointing fingers at white people,
Yeah.
white oppressors. But I feel like if they were more toe and toe with black Republicans and black conservatives, instead of just bashing the black community and blaming the black community and actually looking at progressive policies,
Mm-hmm.
they would have already had the allies.
Right. Right. But they're listening to the pundit. I heard a black pundit, which will remain nameless, and they were very much was like, it's discriminated against white kids. And I'm like, it's true. But when are you going to mention about the racist math and them taking away acceleration from black students? Because they're happening in these black cities. You know what I mean? So like, when are you going to mention that part?
I
so
mean,
so
just
that
saying.
we all can be concerned about everybody.
Yes, because just saying that white kids are racist and oppressors, what you're really saying is that we're the weaker ones being oppressed by them.
Yes.
So you're not
Yes.
only saying that white people are problematic, you also trying to describe us as weak and
Yes.
minded,
Yes.
weak-willed. And I was in advanced placement math. I had advanced placement English. I had advanced placement, what was the other one? Chemistry and English
Yes.
literature. And I grew
Yes.
up in Baltimore, which Trump said was a shithole, which
Baltimore.
yeah, which he ain't technically wrong, but there's also millionaires in the city too. But
Yes.
back to the situation is, I grew up in that situation. How did I become a conservative? That makes me start
Mm-hmm.
wondering, like, it's something, why did I get indoctrinated by
Right.
liberalism and things like that. So
And I think that's really important what you said about like that for them to not only insinuate, but to say black people have no power, black people are not privileged. I beg to differ. I would say my son is privileged. He has a mother and a father who are both college graduates. He gets anything he wants, spoiled brat, and so do my friends' kids. They're
they are
privileged. I'm
privileged,
sorry.
yes.
So you're gonna tell
I
me
probably
Diddy?
could find some white kids who would trade a spot with my son today if they knew what his room looked like and
Right.
upstairs.
My son gets
Yes,
anything he wants.
yes.
Anything.
So you like what?
He
You think
tells me what he
we
wants for
don't
dinner and I make it.
we
It's
don't
like,
want we don't want
you
CRT, and I
privileged
hope
kid.
that. And this is what I'm trying to show with my show, that we're conservatives too. We might say black conscious conservatives, which all is a part of it. It just means that we're aware of what's going on. And we're aware of what's working and what's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I bring special guests like you who are actually inside the industry. Like last week I had Nikki, who was an actual doctor inside the healthcare industry. And you are a teacher, because we need actual solutions, because if we don't put out solutions, we don't compete, we don't
Mm-hmm.
fight, and we don't challenge,
Right.
they're going to just fill the hole with whatever nonsense that they can come up with.
Right. We have to compete. Is so important and come up with our ideas of what we think will work. And you can join the school board. You can be very diligent and really let me tell you, superintendents listen to parents. So you can present curriculum to them and you can talk about controversial topics and just make sure that you have both sides, that you're representing both sides. And I think that is a way that you can keep CRT. You can make students feel empowered, both black and white, and not based on the color of their skin, but because of their history. So.
A lot of people are asking us for solutions, and we are solutionaries, like Mashere people say, and we love promoting solutions. So one of the solutions I like promoting is the enchantment theory, and that is relatively new. And
Mm-hmm.
in enchantment theory, I did a little article on the enchantment theory. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really go into in depth because she has an actual course about it. She is on Twitter. I can't think of her name. I think her name is Chloe. And
Yes, it's Chloe. I can't remember her last name, but if you type
yes,
in enchantment theory, I think she will come up.
yes, and you wouldn't necessarily consider her a conservative, so to speak, but her enchantment theory is an actual theory that I think can compete at least toe to toe a little bit with critical race theory. And what it does is, and this is cool for Christians, it goes back to the human condition and how we are humans, and a lot of the problems that we have is just individualistic at the end of
Oh,
the day. And the enchantment theory has a lot of parts to it. I'm going to read a little bit.
I'm gonna look. I'm gonna start reading that in the summer.
Yes, I'm going to give you guys a little bit because I want you guys to know that we do have solutions here at the Conscious Conservative Network. And her name is Chloe Valdari. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced her name. You can look her up on Twitter. It says, after spending a year as a Bartley Fellow at the Wall Street Journal, Chloe developed the theory of enchantment, an innovative framework of compassionate anti-racism that combines social emotional learning, character development, and interpersonal growth as tools for leadership development in the boardroom and beyond. Chloe has trained around the world, including in South Africa, the Netherlands, Germany, and Israel. Her clients have included high school and college students, government agents, and business teams. She goes a little bit into her enchantment theory, which has three principles. They are to treat people like human beings, not political abstractions. That sounds easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
doesn't even list a race right there. Number two, it says criticize to uplift and empower, never to tear down, never to destroy. And three, root everything you do in love. Now, does
Oh.
that sound a lot better than saying, oh, these people are racist, this system is racist, your
Oh,
people
that
are?
does sound good.
Yes. Now, she has a business course for businesses and she has one for teachers. You can look into the different ones and I'll give you the link afterward. And I'll put the link down in the show notes for everybody else who watches this at a later date. I don't have it right now. But I just wanted to let everybody know that when we're out there talking about, we out there punching at people and we're telling
Yeah.
people not to ban, it's because we're thinking long term. A lot of people want the short term, 2022, 2024. I'm just fighting on Twitter. I got somebody in office I'm cool with right now wins. They want the quicker short term wins. But if you start banning knowledge, what happens when they start banning our knowledge? What happens when they start banning teaching theology in colleges? Or
Mm-hmm.
start banning, any type of race history, and then we don't get no black history in there at all. So I want to talk about conservatives need to compete. And as an educator, how does that make you feel now out here in the Twitter streets, teaching and training and letting people know what's going on?
Well, these Twitter streets are very different. I'm used to Facebook, and my account is private, and so it was really interesting with so many different opinions and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not a negative person. I don't bash people. So why are people coming for me? Like, I thought I was coming from a genuine positive space. I couldn't figure it out because it was both conservative and left. And when conservatives were bashing me a little bit, I was very confused. Like, what? Because anytime I mentioned race, it seemed like, oh, you're a leftist, or if I say conscious, or it was just you're disguised as a liberal, and I was just like, wait a minute, no, we are the same team.
They're looking
What's
for the
happening?
creepy liberal around every corner.
Yes, yes, but I really like being able to display what I'm learning. And actually, my motive for getting on Twitter is because, truthfully, I was tired of teachers getting bashed. I really was, and I was like, I know some amazing teachers. I'm doing some great work in my class. Now I want to share that we can talk about race, and to show you that I share conservatism with my students. And like I tell people, the left, they don't believe me. They feel like I'm trying to convert them. I'm like, guess what? Black people are naturally conservative. And
Really
even though
now.
students, right? Because my students come from their parents, most of their parents or all vote Democrat. But I promise you, when I show them factual information, and then sometimes I'll say, like we did something with W. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, and Marcus Garvey, and we did a whole thing. And then it was, if you lived during those periods, who would you be? What movement would you be a part of? I promise you, the majority said Booker T. Washington. I promise. And I was actually surprised because Black Lives Matter, rah, rah, protesting. I thought a lot of them would say W. Du Bois. They did not. And so,
Wow,
yeah,
that's good.
but Booker T. Washington is who I meant. But, and so I do a lot of debates. I do a lot of polls. After I've taught both sides. And even when we did the Black Lives Matter movement, in the midst of the George Floyd's, rah, 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 boom, 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 I had them see videos. We analyzed the movement. I showed them Black conservatives that disagreed and why. Not disagree with the movement, but the organization and some of the things that were happening in the movement. I didn't have half that agreed with the Black conservatives, but it was enough for me to be shocked that they were like, oh, I see what they mean. I actually agree with this person. And some of them, I don't agree with this Black, because this conservative, I mean, they don't know those terms. Like, people think kids are,
Yes.
they don't know conservative, Republican, Democrat. They know their parents are Democrat, but they don't know what it means. They don't.
Yes.
So,
and we're supposed to be the side that is for less government and more individual. So we would say that the solution to critical race theory is what will be the solution to that? Getting conservative teachers to stand up in their classroom, getting parents more involved with their school boards and their superintendents, running for those offices, maybe those seats, getting involved, coming out of the conservative closet, maybe is
yes.
I love your story because it sounds a little bit like mine. I was just Mrs. Pinky on Twitter, just rambling and rah-rah, and I wasn't anybody special. And I was just doing the same thing, and I got tired of stuff being the way it was. So I just came out, and now people see my face.
It just came out. It's so funny.
It's so funny because some people even used to think that I was like a white guy behind a black face picture.
That is
like
funny.
saying things because I was so bold, but I was bold because I was behind the scenes. Like I would just like, I think I had like a dinosaur or I had different.
Oh, like you're not gonna know who right?
But yes, I think Alchemist hit the nail on the head when he was saying that it's out of fear. We fear that we're going to raise our kids a certain way and then they're going to go off to these schools and then come back different. Or we are afraid that the Democrats are just going to take over and then we're going to be Soviet Russia and then everybody's going to be red with sickles and stuff. And if you learn this history, you learn how Americans persevered. You learn how they fought back. You learn how they stood up to Britain and how they stood up to racism and how they stood up. So the more you start getting that pride of American, like, because, Memorial Day weekend is coming up and I want to say God bless all of our fallen and all of my fallen sisters. But those men and women died because they stood up and said something. And I know it's hard. I know I'm not saying, that it's not hard and people are not getting censored and doxxed and losing their jobs and things like that. And I know it probably was difficult for you to decide to do it too. You probably lost some friends or lost some.
They talk about me behind my back. But it's funny. They won't ask me if I voted for Trump. They won't ask me if I'm conservative. They won't ask me. I feel like they don't want to know. Although because I used to make comments on Facebook and then they would tell one of my friends told my husband, and she voted for Trump. Little do you know, my husband voted for Trump. My husband he's always been conservative. He didn't waver. He was always conservative. But and it's funny because he never told me. So he's in the vote conservative. He never told me because he doesn't talk politics.
Yeah, it's so messy.
He said, yeah. Well, when I told him, I said, I'm voting for Trump. Like before, I mean, I voted for Bush and we both voted for Obama, but we never really talked politics. I just didn't know it just never was a
It
thing.
wasn't a big thing. Yeah, and now it's so much in our lexicon, and now we fearful because it's affecting our children, it's affecting our music, it's affecting what we
Yes.
eat. The boxes
Yes.
of cereals are labeled now. And
Yes. It's
so
so
people are getting
important.
afraid, and we have to go back to our principles and road,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
maybe it's our generation that need to stand up now.
Yeah. We have to. And because the majority of my friends that vote Democrat, I promise you they're conservative. I promise you they are. They are
And
conservative to
and
the
a lot
bone.
of
They don't like
times,
this progressive stuff.
a lot of times it's not even that. It's that we don't have the ideas. Like when I was talking about like healthcare last week, what is the conservative plan? What is the conservative option? I just gave y'all Enchantment Theory. That's just one. I know that there's 1776 something that's out
Yeah, the
now.
1776 Unite, they came out with something.
I mean, and
Dr.
I'm not saying
Swain
it's all going to be perfect or all even things we agree with, but compete.
with
Give
something, do
people
something,
options,
something.
do something.
Because
I
CRT isn't going, it's not, I don't know why people think it's going away because you say it's going to be banned. It's still going to be, like, say, for example, it is out of school just for whatever reason, even though it's not. You still have the music, you still have the movies, you still, like, how do you think your kids are going to escape that? Like, it is everywhere. So we have to compete. It is important to come out with some solution. I just don't understand the pundits that are just bad mouthing CRT. And guess what? Not all of it is untrue. Like there are some tenets of it that is
I was
real,
like,
and that's true.
why don't we get a panel together, maybe a Sonny Johnson type, or maybe some other intellectual types on both sides of the aisle, and actually pull that thing apart, and maybe we can actually
Yes.
undo the onion and be like, okay, this white racism, no, we're not going to keep that part, but this,
Yes. Yes.
including Black history, okay, we'll keep that part. All right, these laws are
Right.
based on this. Let's
But don't
fix
tell me I don't have
it.
privilege, and don't tell me I'm not powerful. Like,
Nah, no, no,
don't
no.
tell me I'm not powerful, and that white
We're
people
not.
are the only
Yeah,
powerful ones. Like that's like, do you know how ridiculous
yeah,
that
it's like
sounds?
he's saying that it's against white people, but I think it's very negative to us. You're telling us that we
Yes.
can't do the math. I can't do the
Right.
math. I'm very good at math.
Yeah,
You
and you're
know,
embedding that in the curriculum for the kindergartens to already start off jump that you're not powerful. And then I'm thinking about something this was a first grader activity, and it was Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was colored very, very dark, and then there was a white guy, and then the lesson was, oh, they don't like Martin Luther King because he is black, everything was he is black, he is black, he is black. This is the first grade activity. So imagine a black kid at 6 years old for the first time hearing you don't like me because I'm black. That's shocking. Like, why are you that? And that was in an activity, that was in a story that they were reading. He is black. They hate him because he's black. They don't like him because he's black. How is that black kid internalizing that? You know what I mean? So like you have to
exactly.
think about that. So I don't disagree with the reasons why they came out with CRT. It's the practice that I'm
And then
disagreeing
the
with.
conclusion they came
The
to. Yeah.
conclusions,
And
yes.
I just disagree with the tactics and the strategy of the right. I think a lot of our problems on the right stem from us not being involved and being too laissez-faire and Democrat light for so many
Yes.
years. The establishment just was not fighting back. We had like Paul Ryan and different people not doing anything. So once it got into the lexicon and into culture, now we're trying to come back and stop the bleeding. And we're getting stuff like this lady said in the 1619 project, and we're getting things like that.
Oh,
But
Hannah Nicole.
yes,
Yeah.
if we would have been on top of our ball, we would have had something already
Oh
boom like
yes.
this.
Oh yeah.
Boom
And
that
I've read people
so
tore that used to be the other big thing that people tore apart. I've read some of the 1619. It's not all horrible, but I remember saying, let me give for the benefit. Let me read it because I want to show my students something. I was like, I can't give them this. It's so depressing. It's so
yes.
depressing. Like I was looking for a light. Like you're not gonna give me so the end, we're just doomed. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that I think people are afraid of when we say compete is they don't trust the information to get us over. Like when we're saying go read the history, you learn the history, then you learn how people persevered, you learned how people became millionaires in the 1920s when that was
Yes.
like you
Yes.
learn how people did do certain things despite America's
Right.
flaws. That's what makes America
Yes. Yeah. You can talk about the oppression.
know?
Doesn't mean that
Yes.
but don't leave them there
Yeah,
because they
no,
overcame.
yes. It's like you taking them to the promised land and then you just talk about Moses not getting in and you're like, but the rest of them made it.
Where's the yeah, that's how I felt.
Lesson right there.
Right. That's how I felt when I read some of the 1619 project. Like it wasn't like some of the stuff she was saying was inaccurate, but gee whiz, like, is there a light at the end of this tunnel, Hannah?
Yes. So critical race theory is a theory that is steeped in trying to do something about the racism that was embedded in our systems that we have in the United States. That was historical fact. But its conclusion is that white people are racist and black people are weak. And
Right. They're oppressed. They're powerful.
yes.
We're not.
And we
And we're
can't
just
have that. But we can't run to the government because every time we run to Uncle Sam, just like you said, the Texas government language left loopholes. Every time we run to them, they kind of screw it up. So we're
yes.
going to do free market solutions. We're going to do solutions like school choice, showing up to these school boards,
School choice. Yes.
taking over these seats, going into empowering conservative teachers to step up and teach history. You know,
Yes.
empowering people to come over to the Conscious Conservative Network and
Mm-hmm.
come to some of our courses so we can empower parents, empower people
Yes.
to do that. Oh, that is awesome. Thank you so much for being on my show today. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you need to get back with your family. Do you have anything you want to share with anybody else? You said you had a charity organization or you had something that you were doing?
Oh, yes. It's called Putting the Pieces Together. So it is a nonprofit organization for parents of children with autism or any neurological disability. And so I basically just help parents on that journey. I've been doing it for 12 years. It was discouraging at first, but I realized that God called me to a bigger purpose, and that's to help other parents who may have difficulty enduring that particular journey. And I was able to get out of my depression because I was really depressed when he was diagnosed for 3 months. And so through my depression, I was able to help one person. And after that, I was like, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. So yeah, so teaching and also just helping other parents to, like I said, navigate that journey of autism because it can be very challenging. Yes. Oh, and I have a business.
Yes.
I have a small business. I sell earrings like this, and I sell head wraps.
Okay.
Mochamotifs.com. So yes, I have a little. I do a little something. And it would inspire me to do that because I said, you know what, I want to teach my students about entrepreneurship, but I don't have a business, and so I got a business, and that was literally my reason. Because I wanted to teach, I was like, next year, I want to teach my students about entrepreneurship. Oh, wait, I need a business. And so I got it. I got a business and it's doing well. So, and my students support me. They bring their parents to me to like buy stuff. So it's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I just want to go through the comments one more time before we go through. We have Deborah.
Yes.
She says, Brittany King of American Shade hosts great panels. She just did one on people pro and anti-CRT. That would be a great to see one with teachers. Oh, okay. Debate.
Oh, Brittany King, American Shade.
American Shade. Okay, we'll go ahead and check it out.
Oh, thank you.
The Alchemist, he said that Nicole Hannah Jones was trending over the weekend. She did not get her tenure.
She did not get her tenure. Yeah.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. It had a lot to do with because she did the 1619 project.
So see, I mean, you never know. Like stuff comes back around. That's that law of sowing and reaping right there.
The law of sowing and reaping, yes.
Sowing and reaping right now. And just someone wants to tell you. They said, "I love this. Thank you so much."
Oh.
And they said this was great. Well, look Donique up on the Twitters. Oh, they're gonna check you out. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on Miss Pinky Thoughts. I'm your host, Nicole Pinkston. If you could like and subscribe to the channel, please share. We're going to have more stuff for you in the Conscious Conservative Network. And you guys have a good night. Thank you for joining us on the channel.
Bye.